Hello everybody and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be taking you through pagination. Now if you've come here not knowing what that is, then don't worry, it's just a really, complicated word to describe putting pages on something. Now the logic that I'm going to teach you today is just a bit of mathematics, and really it can be applied to absolutely anything. For example, you could have pages in chat, or you could maybe find a use for it somewhere in minigames or a lobby, but in this example I'm going to be using a GUI. Now, personally, I'm a big fan of GUIs, so maybe there's a little bit of bias as to why I'm choosing that, but I think that they look really cool in GUIs to have a page system. Now, what I mean by that is, essentially just, as you can see, you would have a load of items inside of your GUI, and then 2 of those slots would be reserved for pages. And then you use those page buttons to go on to the next page or the previous page, and we use some mathematics to calculate whether you can go on the next page and retrieve the items for the current page and so on. So it's a little bit more difficult than you might think. There's not really any built-in API functionality for it. We just have to write some maths ourselves. But it's absolutely achievable. So if you're as excited as me, then hang on this video and hopefully we'll make something cool by the end of it. So what I think I'll do is I'll start with a GUI and a command. We'll have it so that that command opens the GUI. So this is all stuff we've done before. We have a video on custom GUIs, and of course we have a million videos where we've done commands. So we'll start with the custom GUI. So we'll call our GUI, let's just say we're going to make a warps GUI. So just like that, and let's say we're going to have loads of different, we'll say ender pearl items inside of it. So we're going to have a warps GUI. Now that's just one use case, of course there's so many different ones, but I think that might be a nice one. So just as usual with a GUI, we're going to firstly take in a parameter of the player, so that we now have access to the player variable inside of this class, and then we'll also make it so that we implement inventory holder. Oopsie, inventory holder, just like that. So implement members, and then click OK, and then perfect. Okay, so what we'll now do is quickly make our command. So we'll do warps command. So somebody's going to essentially run /warps, and it's going to open the warps GUI. I think this is a really nice use case, so I'm happy we've chose this. So what I'll do is make it so that it implements command executor, as always, and I'll go ahead and implement that function. Okay, and then what I'll do is go to the plugin.yml, and I will simply do commands and then warps. Okay, and then go to my main class, and in the onEnable we'll do get command warps, and then I'm going to not alert because I know it exists dot set executor, and then we'll do a new instance of warps command. Okay, good stuff. So that's really all the boring stuff out of the way. So now we need to make it so that our warps command triggers opening this GUI. So to do that, we're just going to firstly check that it's a player, because of course if it's not a player, so it could be a console or a command block, we can't open a GUI for them. So we'll just do if sender is not an instance of player, then we're going to return false. Okay, perfect. So now let's open it for them if they are a player. So we'll do a new instance of warps GUI, and then we'll pop in the sender as the player, and then we'll finish this function off by simply doing return false. Of course, you can add any permissions checks you want to, or anything like that here. Alright, good stuff. So now I'm comfortable that when somebody runs /warps, it's going to go ahead and open this GUI. So now we just need to make this GUI like regular, and then we'll get with the paging logic. Which, for me, I'm not really a mathematician, and I do struggle to understand some mathematics, so it's a little bit, we'll say fun. I think that would be the nice way to put it. But we'll get through it. So we'll just do it as usual. We need to create a variable for the inventory. So we'll do private val inventory equals bucket.create inventory. And then the inventory holder is of course going to be this. And this just means we can use it in the inventory click event, which we will do at some point, in order to get the information within this class. Okay, and then we'll do the size. So let's just say we're going to make a full GUI, so we'll do 54. That's a full 6-row double chest GUI. And then we'll put a nice title. We'll do component.text, and we'll do warps. Okay, perfect. So what we need to do is inside the getInventory function, we're going to return this inventory. Perfect. And now what we need to do is design the inventory itself. So we'll do an init block here, and here's where we're going to pop in all of the different items for the inventory. Now this is where it starts getting onto the maths, basically. I have to preface this by saying you need to pull your data source from somewhere. So if you're going to have warps like I am, then you're going to need to have, for example, an enum, which has all of the warps in it, and we can loop through those. or you're going to need to have them in a database. You're going to need to have a source for your item stack somewhere. Of course, I can only guide you, and I'm just going to do a sample data set, so I'll just create a list of maybe 50 different item stacks for this GUI, just so that we can see the pages. Now, you'll have to do a similar thing if you have no data source, but of course, if you're going to actually use this, then you need to know what items you're going to put inside the GUI. So whatever you do, make sure you have your list of item stacks. So what I'll do is, I'll do private, and I'll do val, and then I'll do warps, and then I'm going to do equals, and we're going to make it a mutable list, just like this. And then we're going to do parentheses and pop in the number that you want. Let's say we're going to have, so let's think a GUI has 54 slots. We're going to reserve 2 of those slots for the page buttons. So we're going to have 52 slots per GUI. So why don't we do 2.5 full? So let's just say that's roughly, let's do 130. So we're going to have 130 item stacks. Now the way that we actually create this in mass is we pop in what we want to create here, and it will add it 130 times. So we'll do item stack, and then simply material.ender perl. Now, of course, as I said, this is sample data. Now, obviously, you're not just going to pop in 130 random item stacks and call it a day for a warps GUI. You're going to have to add all of the warps functionality and pull all of these warps from somewhere, but I'm just showing you the page system. So just imagine this was a solid warp system, and they all had unique warps and stuff. Okay, good stuff. So now I have the inventory, and I have all of the items that I want to be displayed within my GUI. Oh, but we have a slight problem, and that is I've got 130 items, and my GUI's only got 52 spaces left for items. So of course, let's implement a page system. So what we're going to do is do inventory.apply, and inside of this scope function here is where we're going to add all of the items to the inventory. We need to now go and create a util class, and that's because I'm going to create 2 separate functions. One of them is going to be called isPageValid, and we're going to check if, for example, the left or the right page is valid, so we can show a green button versus a red button if it's invalid. And the second function is going to retrieve the items for the current page. So what we'll do is create a new class. Now this one's going to be an object, and the reason is because I want these functions to be global, and we don't need an instance of this class, we just need it so that we can use this because they're just helper functions. So we'll create an object, and we'll call it, let's just say, page util. You can call it GUI util, you can call it anything you like, but page util works for me, and we even have a nice icon just there. Okay, so we essentially just need to pop in functions here, and we can just then run page util dot and have access to those functions. So the first function I'm going to do is to get the items for the current page. So what we'll do is inside our warps GUI, we're going to write a little page variable here. So we'll do private, and we'll do var, because this is going to change, and we'll do page. So it's going to start on page 1. Okay, so what's going to happen is when I do this function to retrieve the items that should be displayed on the current page, I'm going to need access to the page. So I'll create the function first. We'll do function get, let's say, items, and we need to pass through firstly the page index. So we'll do page index. That's going to have to be an int. Okay, and then secondly, in order to determine what items to return for that specific page, we're going to need the full list of the item stack. So we'll do items, and we will take a mutable list of item stack for that. Okay, and then the third thing that we're going to need to know is the amount of spaces that are available within that GUI. Now, because we're making a global util here, I want it so that you can use this function on any different GUI you want. You might have a GUI that's only 1 row long or 3 rows, in which case the space will change. So what I'm going to do is take an integer, which is going to say the available space that we can fill with these items. And of course, that's going to be used in the calculations. So we'll do spaces, and we'll just take that int. Okay, we're going to open that up, and we're actually going to return the mutable list of item stack. So we're essentially going to be returning a sublist of this original list based on the information that we have. So it's a little bit complicated, but if you imagine we have about, what did we set it to? We have 130 items. Now there's 52 slots that we have available to fill per page. So on the first page, if we do get items, we're going to do page 1, pass through the items, and then say 52 spaces. This is going to return a mutable list of the first 52 item stacks in this list. Now, if we ask for then page 2, that's going to return a mutable list of the second 52 item stacks. So it'll start at the lower bound of the second page, and it'll go to the upper bound of the second page, so it'll only return the contents that should be shown for the second page. Now, of course, for the third one, we have a little bit of a different scenario because we're not going to fill up the third GUI, in which case that's totally fine. The code that we're going to write is essentially going to return everything it can, and then we'll just leave the rest of it blank. So all this function is doing is looking through this list, it's setting the boundaries of the sublist that we need to get from this list, and then essentially just returning that sublist so we can put it in our GUI, and we know that whatever's in our GUI is relevant to that page. Okay, so let's get writing some code. Okay, so what we're going to do is we'll do val start index. So this is going to be the lower bound. So we're going to do equals page index minus 1 times spaces. And then we're going to do val end index. And this will be equal to start index plus spaces. Okay, so let's look at what we've done there. If you're a mathematician, you get it instantly. If you're not, just sit with me. So we're creating a variable which is called start index, and this is the lower bound of the sublist that we're trying to take from this items list. So let's actually just put some mathematics into it. So page index, as you can see, I'm going to start with page 1. So this is the first page. So I'm going to give it page 1. So let's just do the mathematics. So 1 minus 1, of course we do the parentheses first. 1 minus 1 is 0. So 0 times spaces, well anything times 0 is 0. So start index is equal to 0. So then end index is going to be equal to 0 plus spaces, which I know is going to be 52. So that's going to be the lower bound is 0 and the upper bound is 52. So can you now see how when we do return items.sublist of start index to end index, you can see we're now getting the sublist. So if we're on page 1, we're going to get 0 to 52. Now, of course, that is what we want to show for page 1. So if we do the mathematics for page 3, that'll be 3 minus 1, so that's 2. So 2 times 52 is going to be 104. And then 104 plus 52 is going to be 156. So we have here start index 104, end index 156. Now that's fine, but we need to be a little bit careful because, as we know, in here there's only 130 warps, so we can't be getting the index 156. If we try and get that, we're going to get an error. So what we're going to have to do is write here dot coerce at most. And what that's going to do is essentially say if end index is greater than the value we put in here, so we're going to do items.size. If it's any greater than the total size of the items, then make end index equal to that value. And if it's not greater than, then just let it be what it is. So this is going to make sure it will never go above the size of the list, which of course if it did would give us errors. So I know this can be a little bit confusing if it's not really your thing, mathematics, but essentially we're just getting the lower bound and the upper bound of the list of the items that we want to present on the page. So that's the getItems function. So what we can do is perhaps inside of the apply function, in fact I actually want to change this slightly. I want to have a separate function to update it, and I'll make it public, so we're going to do fun update. Okay, and I'm going to run this inside of the init block. Now the reason for that is when we have somebody update the page, we need to update this function so that the items in the inventory change. So we need this function to be able to run multiple times. So what we're going to do is firstly clear the inventory. If we don't clear the inventory, then when we try to set different items on different pages, there may be a bit of a mess. So just make sure the inventory is empty for when we update it. And secondly, now we can loop through the items and put them into the inventory. Now I'm going to use the add item function. So what I'll do is pageutil.getItems. So we're going to pass through the page index, so that's page, and then we'll pass through the warps, and then the spaces, which I know in our case here is 52. You can see we've got 54 slots, but that's because I'm about to make 2 page items. So we're going to loop through this sublist. We'll do for each, and then we'll simply do inventory.addItem, and then pop in it. Okay, perfect. Now, the problem with add item is it just adds it to the first available space. So before we add all of the items, we're going to have to make clear our page buttons. Otherwise, they're just going to end up shoved to the end of the inventory. So I think the page buttons, let's just make it either side of the top, like in the example you've seen at the beginning. We'll do top left and top right. Now, to get inventory slots, I'm using this website that my team and I made, so you can see that top left is slot 0 and top right is slot 8. If you like this website, then it'll be linked alongside this video, so you can come check it out yourself. We have loads of other stuff, but for now, I just need to remember 0 and 8. So the page left button is going to be 0 and the page right button is going to be 8. So I want it so that when you can't go to a page, it'll be red. And if you can go to a page, then it'll be green. And that just kind of shows the player what they're able to access and what they're not. So I'll have to create a function to determine whether they can go to a certain page based on, well, a bit more mathematics. So I'll go to my page util and I'm going to add another function. This one's going to be called isPageValid. Okay, now the parameters that we're going to want for this one actually happen to be the exact same parameters. So we're going to pop that through there. So we're going to take in the page index, the full list of items, and the spaces. Now, I know it may almost feel a bit inefficient repeating this, but the reason we're doing it in a util is so that it can be used across all of your different GUIs. So we do need this information when we make this calculation. Okay, so based on this information, we need to determine if the page index that we're trying to check for is valid or not. For example, if they're on the first page and they try to go left one, that's invalid. There's nothing before the first page. And if they're on, let's say, the third page, as we said, this is not going to be any bigger than 3 pages. The third page is only going to be half full. Then if they try to go right, that'll be red also. They shouldn't be able to. But they should be green to switch in between 1, 2, and 3. So we need to calculate that. Now, it's important to know that this page index is going to be the intended page that we're checking for. So, for example, in here, I'm going to do isPageValid, and then page +1 and page -1. So, knowing that, firstly, we need to rule out anything that's below 1, because as we know, page 0 is not valid, page -1 is not valid, and so on. So we're going to do if page index is smaller than or equal to 0, then return false. And we need to make this return boolean, isPageValid, return false. Okay, and now to the actual math part. So we're going to do return. Okay, so now that's ruled out the lower bound, because you can't get any less than 1. Of course, we have to have something in the GUI, so it will start with 1. So anything lower, anything down, is ruled out. So now we need to just make sure that they can't go above if there's not enough items for it. Or they can, of course, if there is enough items for it. So we'll do return, and then we'll do if items.size is greater than page index -1 times spaces. Okay, might look a little confusing. Let's give an example. So we're checking for page 4. So we'll do 4 minus 1 is 3. 3 times spaces. We know spaces is 52. So 3 times 52 is now, as we found out up here, 156. And now have a look. So we now know this calculation here is 156. And we also know that the items.size is only 130. Therefore, 130 is not greater than 156. And so it'll be red. Now, if we had something here which was less than 130, then of course that would return true, so we'd make it green. So all that's doing is firstly minusing 1 from the page because index isn't in colon start at 0, and then we're timesing by the spaces, to essentially get the lower bound. So then we can just check if the amount of items is greater than the lower bound, i.e. there are items for that page, however many there may be, it's just greater than, so there is at least 1, then in that case we'll return true. So it's a little bit confusing, it can be, but that's all right. We're going to get our heads around it. So what we're going to do now is, now that we have that function, we'll do, in fact, because we're using inventory so much, we'll do a little apply scope function. So we'll start with the clear, okay, and then we'll pop this in there, just like that, add item, and then we'll go ahead and add the page in the middle part here. So we'll do set item, and then I said that slot 0 is going to be for my left page, so I'll do 0. And then I'll create a new item stack. Now, here's where I'm going to just change a couple things up. So what I'll do is I'll do val left page valid. And then we're going to run the function. So we'll do page util dot isPageValid. Now we're going to do the current page. So it's currently 1, but it will change. -1 because we're going left. So then we pass through the warps. And then we pass through the 52 spaces. Okay, so now we have a boolean as to whether the left page is valid, so we can do things like change the title or make the item a different item. So if the left page is valid, so I'll do if left page is valid, then I want to make the item material dot, let's say, lime stained glass pane. Now if it's not valid, then I want to do, let's say, red stained glass pane. Okay, now what we're going to do is run apply on the scope function, and then we'll close that off with our parentheses. You can see we're getting a bit chunky here, but that's all right. So that's fine. So what we're going to do now is add a little bit of item meta. So we'll do file meta equals item meta, and then we'll do meta.displayName. So we'll do component.text and we'll do page left, and then we'll change the color based on whether you can actually go left or not. So we'll do dot color, and we'll do if left page valid, then we'll do named text color dot green, so it's valid. Else we'll do named text color dot red because it's invalid. Okay, then let's go ahead and reset the meta. So we'll do meta item meta equals meta. All right, so that's the left page sorted, and it's using our fancy function which we set. So we'll go ahead, and I hesitate to do it because it's a lot. We can make a mistake easy, but I'm going to go and copy and paste it. So let's go ahead and get started changing it. This is a good skill to pick up, is to not mess it up when you copy and paste something big. So firstly, right page valid. Now I'm going to change all instances of right page valid. So there and then there. Secondly, we're going to do +1 because we're going right, so it's going to have to be +1. Okay, then thirdly, I'm going to change the item to slot 8. As I showed you on the MC Utils website, slot 8 is the right one. Now we can leave the lime stained glass pane and the red stained glass pane. We want it to perform in exactly the same way, but we are just going to have to change the title from page left to page right. Okay, I'm happy that we've copy and pasted that successfully. So now, guys, when this update function is run, the inventory is going to empty itself, and then it's going to paste the left page. Now that could be a green or red stained glass pane. It's going to set the right and do the same thing. And then it's going to loop through all of the items that we should be displaying for that page and then add those items to the page. So I guess you could say all that we need to do now is make it responsive. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and create a listener, and we will listen to the inventory click event. So let's just say I'm going to have a GUI listener. And in here, I'm going to have a big fancy plugin and listen to loads of different GUI types. That's fine. So make it, implement listener, and then head to the main class, and we'll do bucket, get plugin manager, register events, and then new instance of the listener class. Perfect. And then the instance of the main class. All right. So we've done the inventory click event before quite a few times. It's nothing fancy. So we'll do function on inventory click, and then inventory click event. All right. Good stuff. Okay. So the first thing we're going to check is that the holder is an instance of our warps GUI. And that's just essentially how we tell that we have an instance of this class. So we'll do if e.inventory.holder is not, so that's exclamation mark is, not an instance of warps GUI, then we're simply just going to return. We don't care about anybody else's GUI, just our warps one. So what this is going to do is give us access to the inventory holder class, which is this. So of course, when this class is initialized, we're going to have our instance of player here, and then we're going to have to make it so that the player opens the inventory. We'll do it after it updates, just so that they don't see all the flicker. So we'll do open inventory and then inventory. Okay, so they'll open that inventory, and then once this inventory is opened, anything they click within this inventory will then be part of this class instance, which is an inventory holder, which allows us to retrieve it. Now, the good news about that is we can also retrieve the information and the functions inside of this class. In just a moment, what we're going to do firstly is make sure that they have actually clicked an item. So we'll do if e.currentItem is equal to null, then we're going to return. All right, so now what we'll do is we will do a little Kotlin when block. We're going to do when, and then we'll do e.raw slot. So we're now going to be able to check in a nice little comprehensive when block what slot they've clicked on. Now that's perfect for us because I know that 0 is the page left button. I know that 8 is the page right button, and I know that anything else is one of our warp items. So I'll do 0. Now if you want to add some comments, maybe saying page left or page right, then feel free. 8, and then we'll do an else, because I know that anything else is an item they've clicked on. And I know they've definitely clicked on an item and not just an empty slot, because we just did that current item check. So that's perfect. So now we need to write the logic for essentially allowing or disallowing them to switch the page based on whether the page is valid or not. Now, because we've already done this check inside of here and we've already applied the valid pages and they can't change the page without going through this listener, all we can do is simply just check if the item type is the lime stained glass pane. Now you could run the page util is page valid check again if you want to have peace of mind, but there's absolutely no need to do that because they can't get to a different page without going through here. if e dot, and because we're going to use the current item quite a few different times here, what I'll actually do is instead of returning null, we'll do something with the same effect. We'll do val item equals e dot current item Elvis operator return. Now that's basically going to say if anything to the left of this Elvis operator is null, then return. So if the item's null, return. If it's not, assign it to this variable. So we can now easily do if item dot. That's just a nice way of writing cleaner code. So if the item dot type is equal to material dot lime stained glass pane, then we know they are okay to go page left. In which case, what we're going to do is update their inventory. So to do that, we need access to the Warps GUI. So, even instead of doing this, what we're going to do is actually change this line of code up here. So we're going to keep the exact same logic. We're just going to do the same null check. So we're going to check if, well, just follow my lead. So we'll do val, and we'll do Warps GUI. So now we're going to have access to an instance, a live instance of this class. We'll do e.inventory.holder, and then we'll do as, but we're going to do as question mark, which means if the cast fails, then it's going to be null. So if the cast fails, so we're going to make it Warp GUI, then of course, we're going to Elvis it. So if this cast has failed, it's going to be null, and if it's null, then it'll return, it'll stop the code. So now we have access to both the Warps GUI and the item, and if any of those are null, then it's going to stop the code, which is perfect, because now we can access the Warps GUI, and we can simply, well, we need to update the page. Now, so I'm not sure why that's a private variable, so we'll make that just a regular variable, so it's public now. And we'll do warps GUI.page minus minus. And that's going to that's just essentially warps GUI.page equals page minus 1. Okay, and then all we're going to do is warps GUI.update. Perfect. And you can see that it's going to update because all of this logic here is based on the page variable. So as long as we've updated the page variable, then it'll do all this stuff based on the new page. So we can actually just copy and paste this and have a similar logic for the right page. So we'll do if the item is equal to that, then we'll do warps GUI.page plus plus. So it's going to be +1, and then we'll update it. Now, of course, if it's the red stained glass pane, which means you can't go page left or right based on our calculations because there's no items for you in that page, then nothing will happen. We're just running an if statement here, so it won't do anything, which means what we can do is we can just have down here e.isCancelled equals true, and it means they won't be able to pull the item out of the inventory, they won't be able to do anything, they'll just get ignored basically. Okay, perfect. And then what we can do in this little else branch, which is when they click on a warp, of course this is entirely dependent on what you want to do with your system, but I'll just maybe have a little, we'll do e.whoclicked.sendMessage, and I'll just, nice little component, I'll just say, you clicked on a warp, and we'll say this feature does not yet exist. Sorry. Perfect. Looks good to me. That's some professionalism right there. So there we go, guys. Now, I realize this logic can be a little bit confusing, and we've definitely been on a roller coaster in this video. But personally, I think this is going to look like it's working. So we'll just have a quick look through just to look for any issues and just so I can explain roughly what's going on. So we're creating the inventory as normal. When the inventory is first created, we're updating it, and we'll go through that function in a second, and then we're opening the player to it. And then the update function is just making sure there's nothing in the inventory, setting the left and right page based on the calculation each time, and then setting the items itself. And then all that's happening is, in the GUI listener, so where we respond to when somebody clicks, we check if somebody's clicked on the left page. Is there a valid left page to go to based on the calculation? If there is, then change the page and update it. And the same logic for the right page. And all in all, just cancel the event and don't let them take anything. So I'm very happy with this. I think I love doing videos like this because we've used 5 different classes here and also an object, which is really nice. And it's also involved some decent math. So I'm happy with this, guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire it up on my server and we'll go in game and I'll run the /warps command and, well, we'll hope for the best because you don't usually leave something this long without testing it. So we'll go ahead and see. Fingers crossed. Alright guys, I'm heading into my server now, and here is the moment of truth. I will go ahead and run /warps, and we'll see what happens. So I did /warps, and as you'll notice, it looks like somebody might have forgot that they actually stack. Yes, indeed. So that's a bit of egg on my face. So what we're going to do is head to the get items sublist, and then what we're going to do is instead of add item, we will do set item, and we'll do first empty. Now first empty is going to return the slot number of the first available slot. Now what that means is they're not going to automatically stack as we've seen here. They'll go like this in each one of them. And then there won't be any mathematical issues of going too big because of the way that we've calculated it all quite nicely. So I will restart the server, and please don't tell anyone that happened. I'll see you guys in a sec. Alright guys, we're heading in back in now. There's no shame in what just happened. Like, I tried to mitigate all the bugs and problems that I have in the course so that I don't freak you out, but honestly, they're just a part of life. It happens. That was such a simple thing to miss. I'm an idiot, but we move. So what I'll do, I'll go ahead and run /warps now. Okay, perfect. So you can see I'm clicking on the warps and we're getting the message. Now I'm going to click on the page left. You can see it's red because we're on the first page, so we couldn't possibly go left a page. So I'll click it, and you'll see we're not going anywhere. Okay, so now I want to go to the right page. I've clicked it, and you'll see we've moved to page 2. And you'll see now page left is open. I'm clicking, toggling between page 1 and 2 here. So now we're on page 2. And by the way, you can even, as a nice little feature, include the page in the title. That could be fun, so people know what page they're on. But generally, all the items in your GUI will be different, so they'll have a better idea than this, but it's up to you, how cosmetic you want it to be. But there's page 1 and 2, so let's go ahead and go to page 3, and you'll see page 3 is only half full as we expected, and also we can't go any further than that. Now, personally, I don't know about you guys, but I think that's really cool to see that we actually have a working page system, and it's very expandable because, as you can see in the page util, all we have is simply these two calculations. So now you can make any GUI with any items you want and just make sure that you provide the spaces and the current page, and then you can do all of this stuff. You can have a page system on every single GUI. Now personally, I think that's really cool, and I think if you've managed to sit through this video and you've managed to replicate this, then you deserve a massive pat on the back because this isn't easy. And that's why it's positioned so late in the course. So hopefully you guys had some successful results here. If you didn't, then don't worry because the source code is always available alongside the video, so you can go ahead and check it out. And you can just copy and paste it. It's all yours. Take it. I don't mind. But other than that, let's just be happy at what we did today. A working page system, and it's pretty damn cool. So if you need any assistance, guys, come join us on the Discord. We'd be more than happy to help with this stuff. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.